HoverFit is a different action than other fitness apps. We have tried to make a full body workout, and we have introduced a thing which is much more full body in its build-up. As a VR application, the thing that is slightly unusual about HoverFit is that it has been built for WebXR.
Welcome to a new episode of XR and AI Spotlight, the show that gives the stage to the founders and makers pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. My name is Gabriele Romagnoli, I'm your host, and I'm here today with Yin-Chien Yeap, aka Yin-Ch. Yin-Ch is an XR developer who believes in making accessible immersive experiences for everyone. And as part of that mission, he and his team have decided to bring a popular genre to the WebXR world, fitness. In this conversation, we will discuss how they managed to prevent motion sickness despite being, at the end, an intense racing app.
I might think of the game as being like cardio Mario Kart. It's like doing racing, except you have to work for it. Lots of times people will avoid motion sickness by having things be very static. For the use case that we have, there has to be a lot of motion. There's 2, 4, in fact, maybe even 3 ways to help with motion sickness.
How the web is more powerful than what you might think.
Our poly counts are high. Our frame rates are high. We have real-time lighting. We have rigged and skinned avatars. So we have many of the features of a native game. So WebXR, I would say, is maybe 10, maybe 15% slower than native. So that the difference is not big in terms of what the browser is capable of. One big factor in what you can get out of WebXR is choosing the right tools.
And the implication of web-based content for the future of XR.
I think one of the perils of following the idea is people imagining VR headsets functioning the same way as your smartphone. I think expecting people to replace their phones with a headset is premature.
But before we get into it, I wanted to thank our sponsor Meshy, who made this episode possible. Meshy is a real powerhouse for generating 3D assets with AI. You can start with a simple text or image prompt and get high-quality, stylized 3D models in just a minute. There are 2 features that completely blew my mind. One is the ability to create stylized texture for any mesh, with or without UV. And the other is the ability to edit portions of AI-generated textures like in Midjourney in Painting. The team has been pushing continuous updates, improving significantly the geometry and texture quality, and I strongly encourage you to visit meshy.ai and check out the generous free plan. After that, make sure to use the code XRAI20 to get a 20% discount on your subscription. And now it's time to roll the title and welcome Yin-Ch under the spotlight. Yin-Ch, it is a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you for having me, Gabriel. I'm very pleased to be here.
So maybe, Yin-Ch, why don't we start with the core questions? There are many people that have tackled this XR, fitness in XR. So how is HoverFit different from other VR experiences and maybe fitness apps?
At its core, HoverFit is a different action than other fitness apps. We have tried to make a full body workout, and it has been designed by Olympic skiers who have a lot of experience with fitness. And so we have tried to make the fitness experience not just be about the arms, but a lot of VR fitness experiences are very, very upper body. And we have introduced a thing which is much more full body in its build-up. So at the core, it is a different physical motion. As a VR application, the thing that is slightly unusual about HoverFit is that it has been built for WebXR. And the WebXR allows it to be deployed from the web. There's no installation. And also it runs across multiple headsets. So obviously with the recent announcement of Android XR, people who build for native will be going, there's another SDK to build for the APK. But because WebXR is browser-based, it will just straight away run on the new Android XR. It already runs on a Pico. It runs on the Quest. It ran on the Vive XR. So WebXR makes it more accessible and it's not locked into a physical platform.
We're going to talk about WebXR, of course, right? Because that's one thing that I really like and is also passionate about because it's indeed open this space that is very often seen as kind of closed. But before going into that, I'm also curious, you mentioned that there was an Olympic athlete who participated in the design. So how did you make that happen? And maybe what was its contribution when actually designing the exercise and the full body workout to some extent that is in the experience?
I met with the Olympic skier through a previous project where we were working on a skiing training treadmill called the Body Carver. And I wrote the software for that treadmill. And we worked together on another WebXR experience called SkiFit 365. And his contribution to it is to know what fitness works. Because lots of times when you are designing as a software developer, you do not have domain specialist knowledge. And so if you're designing for fitness, you design fitness by having fitness experts. And our Olympic skier, Tim, and another Olympic skier called Jack Gower were contributors to the design and the testing of the product. So they weren't just contributors, they were actually the beginning of the product. The product exists to deliver fitness rather than adding fitness to the application.
Because one thing that when trying HoverFit, there is an element of racing to it, right? So a lot of fitness apps, they get you, let's say, standing and punching at things or dodging things. In this case, in a way, I would say it feels more like gorilla tag a bit more, right? There is this element of chasing or racing. And one thing that people often let's say, observe about this experience is that they might make people sick due to motion sickness.
Yes.
How have you dealt with that?
There's twofold, in fact, maybe even three ways to help with motion sickness. Lots of motion sickness can be caused by poor software design. Poor software design is one of the sources. And it's worth mentioning that as opposed to motion sickness being intrinsic in VR, because I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding that all VR will make you motion sick. Lots of times people will avoid motion sickness by having things be very static. But for the use case that we have, there has to be a lot of motion. So the two things we have done is this. Firstly, we worked very hard to maintain a high frame rate when playing the game. So there is a latency. Latency, where there is a lag between what you see and the things moving, is a major source of motion sickness. And the second thing we found, and this is from testing with lots of people, is that the physical action of doing the squats and the arm swings actually help you reestablish balance. So your body is sensing motion, although it doesn't fully match the motion that you're seeing. Any motion at all actually helps your body balance. And so this postural stability that coming from you doing the squats actually alleviates some of the physical sensation of motion sickness because you are moving. One of the visually induced motion sickness factors is that you see motion, but your body isn't moving. But in our game, you are moving and the vision is moving. So that combination also helps alleviate motion sickness a bit.
That's very interesting. And actually, now that I think about it, so in HoverFit, you basically move forwards by doing like cross skiing motion, right? By using your arms and swinging. Yes. And you mentioned also doing the squats as part of it, right? Yes. So how does those two elements contribute? Are you able to basically like track the squats based on the height of the headsets? How does that influence the speed? I mean, those variables of which you have control, being the headset position and the hands position, how do they influence the speed or in general the experience itself?
We have, in our original design, we were trying to make it so that you earn your speed. So the harder you work, either with faster squat or deeper squats, gives more motion. It actually produces the speed of the hoverboard is influenced by how quickly you are swinging your arms and how quickly you are doing the squats. So that combination of facts. So the faster you squat, the deeper you squat, the more speed you get. And we know that it is a very, very effective cardio and full body workout. But we also know that as a fitness application, just now we are making certain additional modes to the game to allow people to stay in the game for longer. Racing is very tiring, and we wanted to create a more sustainable workout mode to let people stay in the game for longer, which still uses some of the motion, still moves you forward, but doesn't wear you out so quickly. So we are refining and iterating the product. So the game is, I like to think of the game as being like cardio Mario Kart. It's like doing racing, except you have to work for it. And we are seeing that it helps people to stay in the game for longer if we create things which are less competitive, things which allow them to stay in longer, for again, always driven by the fitness benefit of it.
I have So, and you mentioned, of course, that this is available for WebXR and actually was built for WebXR, right? How can in general developers build for the web without compromising on performance? What have you learned that you would like to share maybe with people that are trying something like this?
Building for WebXR need not be much of a compromise. I think you will have seen in the game that we have, I believe we have a very high level of graphical fidelity. We haven't tried to make it photoreal, but certainly our poly counts are high, our frame rates are high, we have real-time lighting, we have rigged and skinned avatars. So we have many of the features of a native game. WebXR at its core is not massively slower than native. JavaScript, just-in-time compiling gives you a lot of speed. You have access to WebGL. So WebXR, I think I would say is maybe 10%, maybe 15% slower than native. So that the difference is not big in terms of what the browser is capable of. One big factor in what you can get out of WebXR is choosing the right tools. And I know you interviewed Jonathan Hale from Wonderland Engine previously, and we use his engine. Because I initially tried to develop WebXR using Unity because I'm a Unity programmer, and Unity's export pathway for WebGL was not powerful enough. It wasn't using all the capabilities of the hardware. And so the main thing about trying to get WebXR performance is first to believe you can get performance out of it, to not settle for less, try to put a lot of graphics in it, try to put a lot of, do optimization, and to use the right tool. Using the right tool is important. And Wonderland Engine, to me, is definitely the correct tool to use to get performance in WebXR.
I imagine you also have assessed and looked at other ways to develop on WebXR. So, what did you use to compare? And at the end, you landed on Wonderland Engine. What were the things that you were assessing to say, okay, yes, it should be this, and not maybe Play Canvas, or not maybe another one? What was your thinking process when looking at it?
In a lot of ways, Wonderland Engine takes care of a lot of the optimizations that you would have to do manually yourself. So WebXR can deliver good performance, but often you have to optimize the graphics render buffer. You have to, the GL commands have to be optimized in a certain way. For instance, a very good example is the number of draw calls that happen when rendering something. And traditional, like non-WebXR engine or non-WebGL engine have a tendency to group draw calls based on materials. So the more materials you have, the more draw calls you have. But Wonderland Engine packs the materials for you. So although you might have 100 different materials, you can do it all in one draw call. So that's an optimization. You can build 100 objects with 100 materials, and in other engines, it might be 100 draw calls, and Wonderland Engine is one draw call. And so that kind of optimization is taken care of. They also take care of compression as well. So you can compress assets for you to help the transport happen faster. So the choice of Wonderland Engine versus others has to do with how it automates a lot of the optimization processes, both in terms of performance and in terms of data sizes.
So, I mean, we have discussed, let's say right now, about the app and the building of this experience a bit. If we go one step higher, right, and we look at the role of this WebXR with fitness in mind, right? So of course, we have, let's say, some famous and popular app like FitXR, for example, Supernatural. We also have the non-immersive, let's say, the Peloton and others, right? So what do you think is the role of this WebXR when it's rethinking the way we approach fitness?
I think WebXR offers many of the benefits the web offers. We have seen over the past years, not necessarily in the fitness space, but certainly in terms of things like email and movies, that many things have moved from native to being browser-based. And I know that mobile has its own app space, but I think that the benefit of WebXR in fitness is how it lets people experiment. So even HoverFit, for instance, you don't have to install anything. You just go to the web browser, which is already installed for you in your headset. You type hover.fit in your browser bar, and the game is just there. So it lets people try things out. It lets developers access the audience easily. And when people try things out, they don't have to commit to installing a thing, finding a store, finding a link. And so in a lot of ways, I think that WebXR and fitness is a very natural fit because it gives people access gives people very quick access without having to, commit to a long download, for instance. So accessibility is what the web delivers.
On the other hand, there is always have a question that is more about discoverability. So in the sense, right, when we look at an app that runs on the web, there are different elements. That is, for example, like how do you promote it? How do you maybe monetize it? That makes it disconnected from what is the, let's say, a big part of the current ecosystem, like the Meta store. That's basically a lot of the traffic is happening. So maybe you can tell us, what about discoverability? How do people discover it, and how do you market it? Maybe so. Can you guide us through that?
For the Quest platform, one of the major routes of discoverability is to be listed on the new tab page, which is a series of apps which appear whenever the Quest browser is first opened. We've been very fortunate through our relationship with Meta to get listed in the new tab page, so that every time somebody opens a browser, our app is visible to them. So one is to try to go to the source and try to get the browser, but obviously that is not a general solution open to everybody. On top of that, it is to strengthen numbers. So the website that we have Hoverfit hosted on is a website called heyvr.io. And heyvr.io is a website dedicated entirely to WebXR experiences. So we are discovered by other players who are already looking for WebXR experiences. So, so we gather in large numbers. If you're an individual website out by ourselves, we don't get any cross traffic, like crossing traffic. And by being on a website with other WebXR, we can be discovered that way. And the last way are the more traditional ways. We have a social media presence. We buy ads on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, and we also engage influencers to check out the game, make their social posts, and to maybe do a blog, or maybe do a little Instagram post about this, and we bring them in to have the experience. So there are like WebXR specific ways of discoverability from the new tab page and HeyVR, and then the more traditional ways. And the traditional ways are more obvious, but they have a conversion barrier, because when people see something like a TikTok ad, or they see a social post from an influencer, it's on your phone, it is not in the headset. So they have to make the leap across. So we chase basically all the possible avenues, because we know that we have to work hard. There isn't like a single avenue of discoverability that definitely works.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, of course, I invite everybody that is now listening to go to hover.fit, or you will also find the link in the description and try it out, because I think it is indeed a very much different experience from what the standard fitness. And I had the impression that indeed squatting faster and deeper would lead me to more speed. But now that I know, I have the certainty from you, I'm going to give it another try, and probably
excellent.
Probably put some shorts on, because then it's not going to be enough.
One of the challenges of working on a fitness app is that I always have to do stretches after debugging, which is a thing that doesn't usually happen.
Well, I mean, disadvantage or advantage. I'm not sure how to qualify that. But so then what about the monetization? So, of course, as you mentioned, you're also one of the activity, beside, of course, development, is marketing the app. So this all has cost. So do you have a specific approach to monetize the content on the web?
We have tried to draw on the wisdom of previous markets. WebXR is very young, and we have tried to not commit some of the mistakes of WebGL, for instance, and try to learn from in-app purchases in mobile apps, and to understand how we are not the same as a native app. So we know that web monetization has been it is a problem that the web never really overcame. People think, oh, it's a website, it should be free. But when people see it's an app, say, oh, maybe I should pay money for it. And so one of the opportunities that I think WebXR affords to as a new medium is that people have not acquired the habit of assuming things will be free. So we are hoping that there is a moment in time, because the medium is new, that people will look on the WebXR experience and say, this is like an immersive experience. In the same way that people are happy to pay for a Netflix subscription and you watch it in the browser, they don't, they say it's about the content. The fact that it's delivered over the web layer should not be a big feature. And I would say that it is one of the habits of the WebXR ecosystem to over promote the word WebXR. I think people don't like to be told they have to pay for web anything. So I'm very, we very much want people to think of HoverFit as a VR fitness experience rather a WebXR experience. But when we say web, people says, oh, it should be free. So we want to very much promote people to have to think about what they get rather than how they get it. And so it is a problem.
I just wanted to have a quick break to remind you that if you're enjoying this conversation, you should definitely check out the XR AI Spotlight newsletter. By subscribing, you will get weekly interviews like this one directly in your inbox, an app or product I personally have tested and recommend, and access to a list of over 400 mixed reality apps for Quest that you can easily search and filter. Just check the first link in the show description. And now, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, and I think you also made a good point. The moment that you sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, this could be just my opinion, but I feel like, oh, it's web. Oh, it's going to be a little bit shittier then.
No.
And then I think it's not the case anymore if it is built with intent, with focus, and so on. Because we have seen also many standard apps that might be like pretty terrible from native, right?
Yes,
on the headset.
Yes.
So.
I would say that one of the things about building for WebXR is that it's not that different from building for VR in general. And I think what you get out of it is what you put into it. And I think that there are lots of native apps that look very good, have had a lot of resources put in them, and a lot of native apps that look bad also don't look very good because they haven't put a lot of resources put in them. And WebXR and VR are no different. I think sometimes when people say this VR experience or this WebXR experience doesn't look very good, it's proportional to the resources put into it. I don't think you can expect people to do things in the spare time to a quality that a 200-person studio working full time on it. So I don't think that it is the web that makes it hard. It's at least partly a resource issue. And in HoverFit, we made a lot of effort to make sure it had the resources to achieve the quality. We had separate 3D modelers. We have some of the best WebXR engineers working on it. We go very low level. We do lots of optimizations to try to get performance. So it's very much an effort thing. And I think with sufficient effort, you can make good WebXR experiences.
So when you were approaching the launch of HoverFit, right? So what did success or failure look like in your mind? Was that about the number of plays, the retention, the time where people spending? Can you paint a picture so that people can also relate to it?
Sure. I think that being a new app in a relatively new medium, we have to stage our expectations of success. In an ideal universe, on day one, everybody loves it, everybody pays money for it, and that would be wonderful. And in that magical unicorn universe, maybe it happened. But real life is much more grindy than that. So we have tried to stage our successes based on first trying to get traffic, try to get people to use it, then get them to play it for longer, then retention. Then when we have a longer playtime, then we expect monetization to follow. Because things like one thing that has been discovered in the research with mobile apps is that people tend to spend money on mobile apps if they play it for a certain amount of time. They have to play it a long time. So expecting people to spend money on your product without solving the retention issue is jumping ahead. And so we very much are learning from how we have to solve first views, then retention, then monetization. So breaking up the stage of success is like very important to us. So discoverability is our first step.
So, and Yinch, please push back if that's not something that you can share. But I'm just curious, when you mentioned about discoverability being the first step, right? Is there like some high-level benchmark that you can give us? Is that in the terms of the hundreds, the thousands of download, or I mean, not
Sure.
download, but like plays in the first month or something like that, just to understand?
We've had tens of thousands of plays in the first month. So
Okay.
which we are pleased with. It's been quite busy in a lot of ways. And it's probably worth mentioning that in addition, I should have mentioned it earlier about what is different about us. One of the things that we built straight into the experience is multiplayer. So you can actually meet with friends in a room. And when you mentioned Peloton classes, well, we have built a Peloton-like feature of being able to race with friends or join a public lobby and then race against humans mixed in with CPU races, for instance. So that's an additional feature. I should have mentioned it earlier. So yes, tens of thousands.
There is another interesting point that made me think when you mentioned multiplayer is like, how do you allow people to connect? So in a sense, for example, Meta has this avatar system where you can also invite people when you are not specifically in the app. So you can send them a message and invite them. There are other apps that just tell you, hey, just send this code to your friends and ask them to invite. What approach have you taken? And is that any difference from the native other in web? Is that something different that people should take into account when organizing something like this?
We have tried to simplify the sharing process so anybody who starts a game can host a room. And once they host a room, they have a room number. And we've made it so that we can generate a URL which brings people into the room. And if they share that link, people can come straight into the room just through one click. So we try to simplify it. And you can also join the room by being told the room ID, and you type the room ID in manually and join it. So we try to create lots of pathways to ease the friction of joining a room or creating a room and joining a room. So it's all because our app is in the browser. You can join a room just with the same URL with a room code at the end, for instance. So we try to streamline the joining process as much as we can.
Nice. So now if we go one step even higher, right? So, and we look broadly about WebXR. So what are the, let's say, challenges that still we need to overcome in order to make VR more accessible, or even WebXR specifically maybe?
Sure. It's probably worth answering the VR question first. I think that WebXR is VR delivered conveniently, accessibly. And so if there is no use case for VR, the fact that you have accessible things to something that people don't want is like, answering the second question first. So I think the challenges for VR is to recognize where VR sits in terms of what it uniquely does best. In a lot of ways, because of how VR emerged through PC VR, people are expecting PC-like games in VR, and that is a design dead end. The things you cannot do or are not natural to do in VR make them a poor fit for just directly porting things from desktop to immersive. There are certain things with motion sickness, with discoverability, with like situational awareness, which is easy on the screen, but it's hard immersively. And so firstly is to acknowledge that we cannot just take desktop designs and just jam the same UX into VR. That just won't work. So that is like the bad news of it, is that we cannot just port things over. It takes some work. It's impossible, but you can't just trivially do it. And the next good news is that the thing that VR is most like is actually the very old Nintendo Wii. When the Nintendo Wii arrived, it did not try to be the follow-on from the PlayStation or the follow-on from the Xbox. It did what it uniquely did best. So all the Wii Sport games, all the things to do with motion, with the Wiimotes, this is a design role model that VR should learn from, about designing something specific to what your thing does best. And I think a lot of successful games like Beat Saber and things like Supernatural come from doing a thing that you can't really do on desktop.
On the other hand, I could argue right now we get more and more push of getting 2D screens apps in our VR headset, right?
Yes.
Because that is what we're getting right now, when it's like,
yes.
oh, we need more flat apps in the headset. And isn't that a contradiction? I mean, should we fight back, or should we just accept and deal with it?
I think another sort of dead end, but one of the perils of following the idea is people imagining VR headsets functioning the same way as your smartphone. The pursuit of the 2D flat apps is the idea that someday there'll be some XR device, AR, or a VR device, which means that when you're using it, you don't need to use your smartphone. And you know how I was saying earlier about staging your successes? I think expecting people to replace their phones with a headset is premature. I'm not saying it won't happen. So I know that then people that bring 2D apps into VR space is, I can see the attraction of it. I can see how people says, oh, if they do that, they won't need their phone anymore. That will not happen for a little while. And the other thing is that with 2D apps in the headset, it is actually less convenient than a phone. And you don't, just in terms of playing to the strength of the device, it isn't playing to its strength.
I totally agree with you. On the other hand, I think that a lot of the arguments for doing that is, okay, we want to bring something that people can understand. And based on that, people will understand that there is this, we have more awareness about what this headset can do. And that's the moment that we'll be able to build something that down the road is going to be more spatial. So going to something that is not logical or doesn't play on the strength of the medium, like, okay, now you have Facebook on a screen in VR, or now you have most screens in VR. Okay, sure. It's seen more as a path towards the adoption, because it makes it more accessible, understandable for people that then maybe might see a bit crazy to start doing squat like a madman in in a headset. That I think makes a lot of sense, because that's what this is built for. But that's maybe what's the whole story has changed, I think, over the past years, seeing that VR maybe, or XR in general, didn't got the adoption that some were hoping for.
I know that one of the thinkings about where VR lies in the whole constellation of devices is trying to accept whether a VR device or an MR device is more like a telephone or more like a photocopier, right? In an office, in a modern office, which I know people don't do that much anymore, but it used to be the case that there will be a phone on every desk. The expectation that there will be a personal device that will be on every desk. But in the whole history of like corporate offices, nobody expected a photocopier on every desk. It was like a grouped resource. And I think that certainly for the time being, VR headsets are more like a group resource. The idea of a personal headset is still some way away. And it may be that, expecting it to be something that people carry around with them the whole time is different from expecting them to use it sometimes, right? So the difference between a game console and a smartphone, you don't expect everybody in the household to have their own PlayStation as much as you expect everybody to have a smartphone. And so the device is still a little bit more like a console, but with lots of aspirations to becoming like the smartphone. I understand the aspirations, but it's a little early.
Yeah. I totally agree on the now. The bet is that we need everybody to own or want one if we want a good enough size, because if it remains kind of like this photocopy, you end up having it to sell only to these enterprises.
Yes.
Right? It's because that's the thing. You have these rooms or use cases that are specific for a certain point in time, maybe during a quarter, maybe during a month, and it's not something that everybody puts on continuously. So then the need for the content, the experiences, for the headset in itself is still becoming thin. So I think you're right, and I really like this analogy between telephone and photocopy, because I'm certainly going to use it in the future as well. So, Yinch, I do have another questions, more like, besides HoverFit, so what do you as a studio, do you run other activities? Do you work on other projects? Maybe just to understand how you as a founder, developer, and passionate about this space actually have carved your niche.
Besides working on HoverFit, I'm also very active in the development of a metaverse platform, a metaverse browser called RP1. And RP1 is trying to create an open standards layer on top of which people can share immersive experiences the same way they share the web. We have RP1 has a very nice scaling technology that allows for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to be in the same shard, be in a single continuous world, to have spatialized audio, to have full telemetry of their body. And so I am involved in which is also a WebXR project, which allows lots of people to build and share experiences.
Nice. And so if people want to know also a little more about that, maybe you can tell, how can people at what stage is this? Is that people
Sure.
can already build in it, or is that something that maybe is still in development? Maybe just to understand.
We are just right now bringing people in to be builders of the world as in a very early access program. If you go to rp1.com, you can join our Discord, and there'll be information on the Discord. There are events being organized to help people learn what are the limits of building for it, and they can build for it and have their items added to the world. And like I said previously, you'll be able to create locations and events which can have 100-200 people in the same event, for instance, just out of the box with no special, with no special booking slides. I know other people have tried to do high capacity metaverses, but they were very compute intensive, and we use a very, very efficient process that allows us to. We leave it on the whole time. We have a 4,000 capacity metaverse server that we just leave running because it's not worth switching it off. So we have very high efficiency and interested to build for the future. And we are come join the Discord, and the information will be there.
Awesome. So Yinch, maybe while we are wrapping this up, what's next for Hoverfit? So you mentioned you start gathering people and users to jump in the world. What's next?
We are looking to do two things. The first thing is to create awareness of our product, of our offering to the ecosystem, to the fitness ecosystem, and to the gaming ecosystem. So increasing our discoverability, increasing awareness is our focus on mission. But as we have more people playing the game, we are also discovering certain refinements to the use case. And so we are things like discovering longevity of play, sustainability of play. We are also slowly making tweaks and refinements to the process to make this be the definitive fitness experience that you can use for either competition or long-term endurance. So Hoverfit has two avenues of progress. One is awareness, and the second is improvement.
Thank you very much. I think that it's really interesting to have understood a bit of what was your journey, but also like what's the role in WebXR in all this. And I didn't know about RP1, and it's something that also people will find the link down below. So thank you very much. Anything else you would like to add for folks?
For the people who are building for VR, for WebXR, I want to let them know that there is still much to be done and much that can be done. And I don't know, it sounds a bit dramatic, but not to give up hope that the future is bright in front of us, not behind us. Lots of the stuff in terms of the cost of hardware has improved dramatically, and the power of the Quest 3S is very, very high. So I would like to encourage people to dream big in the WebXR and VR space.
Absolutely. And for everybody listening, stay around because they're going to be bold people. I'm really passionate about this. So happy to share stories like the one from Yinch with you guys. Yinch, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. It's been lovely to have this chat with you.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, remember to leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the greatest founders and makers, pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. Also, make sure to check out the show page xraispotlight.com, where you can find more conversation like this one. Till next time.